everybody, and welcome back to the Gaming Weeks podcast, your official podcast from analogstickgaming.com. If you don't know me by now, my name is Jordan, one of the co-owners of Analog Stick Gaming, but to my left, as always, is the founder himself, Jeff. How are you, Jeff?
Pretty tired, but let's rock and roll. Let's do this.
Yes, yeah, we are a little bit delayed. We're sorry for being away for a while. I decided to get very ill again, which was unfortunate. But on the plus side, it does mean we have a lot of things to talk about. Why don't we have our small little catch up before we get to the gaming news? And Jeff, I need to know, how are you feeling about the wrestling at the moment?
Well, I mean, Jade got done dirty. That was such a bullshit match. I was expecting her to win Queen of the Ring, and like it was so dumb.
Yes,
Like
absolutely.
she knew hitting Nia Jax with a chair was going to
I
disqualify her. It was
I
so.
agree.
I mean, even then, Nia Jax swung the chair first. So I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe she'll interfere with the match with Bianca
Yeah.
next week.
How do you
Um,
feel about this Cody Rhodes Logan Paul thing that's going on right now?
I I honestly think the belt should have been up for grabs.
Yeah, so do I.
Like it was absolutely stupid. Um, I don't know if there'll be some stipulation next week or something like that,
Hmm.
where like maybe like Logan Paul has to like defeat somebody in order to keep
Oh yeah,
those
maybe,
rules
maybe
going.
it'll
But
be interesting to see where they go. I'm definitely enjoying it. They're on a very good run of shows so far. I think they're doing well. But also, I just want to shout out Drew McIntyre because that guy is like how he's managed to keep this thing with CM Punk going even when CM Punk isn't there, and how he's using social media to also aid in that is really really
mm,
clever. It's some of the best stuff I've seen in quite some time.
yeah, no, yeah, I'll miss the pay-per-view next weekend when it airs, but I'll be watching it um right right after as
Yes, I was going to
soon
say
as I get
it
home.
must be a weird time for you, that one, because they're obviously
Well,
in
yeah,
Saudi.
it's at I think 10 or 11. I think it's at
Oh,
11 o'clock or
oh
whatever.
well,
So
okay.
I'm off at 3:30. So I'll be by the time
Nice,
that I'm
nice.
off, it'll be over. And then
Don't worry,
there's
I
a
won't spoil anything for you.
there's a site I use to watch it, so I'll
Nice,
click the
nice, fantastic.
thing.
Well, with all that being said, we have a lot of video game news to get through. So why don't we go straight into it? And I don't know which order you have these in because you do that yourself, but let's get to the first story, shall we?
Sure, let's actually tackle the kind of the big one. Um, and that is if you've seen our thumbnail, Xbox is shutting down Arcane Austin, Tangle Gameworks, and two other Bethesda studios. The two other Bethesda studios are Alpha Dog and Roundhouse Games, which generally are kind of like their mobile division, but we'll get into it here. Arcane, Tango, Alpha Dog, and Roadhouse Games will be closing down, with some staff joining other teams, according to a memo sent to staff. Staff were told the news over email by Xbox Game Studios head Matt Booty. Um, Booty told staff that the decision was based on a reprioritization of titles and resources, and that some employees will be realigned to other teams and others laid off. The email states, "Today I'm sharing changes we are making to our Bethesda and ZeniMax teams. These changes are grounded in prioritizing high impact titles and further investing in Bethesda's portfolio of blockbuster games and beloved worlds, which you have nurtured over many decades. To double down on these franchises and invest to build new ones requires us to look across the industry and to identify the opportunities that are best positioned for success. This reprioritization of titles and resources means a few teams will be realigned to others and that some of our colleagues will be leaving us." Um, Booty goes on to detail the changes affecting the four studios. Arcane Austin, the studio behind Redfall, will close, with some members of the team joining other studios to work on projects across Bethesda. Redfall's previous update will be its last as we end all development on the game. The game and its servers will remain online for players to enjoy, and we will provide make good offers to players who have purchased the Hero DLC, which is not going to come out anymore. Japan-based Tangle Gameworks, previously responsible for The Evil Within, Ghostwire Tokyo, and Hi-Fi Rush, with the latter coming to other consoles now, will also close, with Booty adding that Hi-Fi Rush will continue to be available to players on the platform it is today. Alpha Dog, the studio behind Mighty Doom, will be closing too, with Mighty Doom closing down on August 7th. We'll be returning off the ability for players to make any purchases in the game. Finally, Roundhouse Games, which itself was formed following the closure of Human Head Studios, will be closing, and the team will be joining ZeniMax Online Studios. Roundhouse has played a key role in many of our recent game launches, and bringing them into ZOS to work on the Elder Scrolls Online will mean that we can do even more to grow the world that millions of players call home. As well as presumed layoffs at Arcane Austin, Tango Gameworks, and Alpha Dog, Booty also told staff that a small number of roles across Bethesda Publishing and corporate teams will also be eliminated, likely due to redundancy. These changes are not a reflection of the creativity and skill of the talented individuals and these teams or the risks they took to try new things. I acknowledge that these changes are also disruptive to the various support teams across ZeniMax and Bethesda that bring our games to market. We are making these tough decisions to create capacity to increase investment in other parts of the portfolio and focus on our priority in games. Booty goes on to tell staff that remains one of the key pillars of Xbox despite the team closures. As we align our plans and resources to best set ourselves up for success in this complex and changing industry, our teams at Arcane Leon, Bethesda Game Studios, id Software, Machine Games, ZeniMax Online Studios, and the Bethesda publishing and corporate teams will be well positioned to build new IP, explore new game concepts, and expand on our existing franchises. Microsoft confirmed in January that 1,900 staff would be laid off across Activision, Blizzard, Bethesda, and Xbox. According to head of gaming Phil Spencer at the time, the decision had been made after Microsoft and Activision Blizzard leadership teams set priorities, identified areas of overlap, and ensured that we were all aligned on the best opportunities for growth. Um, this, here's the thing that really sucks. People lost their job, obviously. Hi-Fi Rush was literally the most talked about Xbox title of last year.
Yeah.
It Aaron Greenberg countered Jeff Grubb's arguments about how it performed, and we've now discovered that Jeff Grubb was correct. And the game was set up for a sequel. They've put it on PlayStation and Switch, and it hasn't been confirmed yet if um, Hi-Fi Rush 2 has been canceled, or it's just going to be made by another studio. Like maybe some of the key people from that game have gone on to another Bethesda studio, and that's going to be a project for them.
Yeah.
Who knows? Arcane Austin had a blunder with Redfall. Probably not their fault. It's probably a game they didn't want to make.
And every studio can have one blunder as well. That's the thing.
Yeah,
Does
but
that
I
mean
mean,
they
they also
didn't
made
deserve another
Prey.
chance? They made Prey one of the
Yeah,
best games.
like like I mean, my issues with Prey is that it replaced Prey 2, which I've seen in person,
Mm-hmm.
played. I have a T-shirt for Prey 2, um, and the fact that it's almost done is just what kills me. And so that was going into Prey. I had that resistance that this exists because that
Of
failed,
course, yeah.
or that you know. But still, Prey is often considered like one of the best titles to come out of Bethesda in like the last 10
Yeah.
years.
And it was
And
one of
you're
those games
shuttering the
that
studios.
received a lot of love after the fact as well, because I think that people realized how special of a game it actually was in that immersive sim genre. They
Yeah.
did some really interesting things there with that game.
Yeah, this is I get why you terminate staff to restructure.
Mm-hmm.
I get that. But I mean, to shutter those studios, like Hi-Fi Rush was not made by a lot of people. It was a small studio, so you could have who knows? Maybe this is what's happening. Maybe everybody that worked on Hi-Fi Rush is still there. Maybe everybody that worked on Ghostwire Tokyo or whatever they were working on again, maybe those people were let off.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we still have the Hi-Fi Rush team. no one knows.
That's the
Like you'd
thing
have to
is,
deep dive into
at,
Lincoln.
at the
Lincoln.
moment, we have no exact confirmation of what is going on for sure. And I do, before we speak about it a bit more, I just want to say, obviously, we are slightly late to this news. It was the other week, but I'm glad that we are because there's something else I'm going to add on in a minute, which will further the discussion, I think. But I think that what we have to remember is, look, I do have issues with this, which I'll come on to. But at the same time, like you're saying, Jeff, we have no clarification on exactly what's happening here. We know that Tango has been shut down. We know that Arcane's been shut down and the two other studios. We know that one of those smaller studios that got shut down has been absorbed into ZeniMax Online Studios. So they're not really shut down. They've just been completely reshuffled and are now part of another team. So that's, I think people have to remember that part of it. And the other part of it is exactly like you're saying, just because a studio has shut down doesn't mean that every single person at that studio has lost their jobs. For all we know, as you're saying, Jeff, there is a chance that maybe the Hi-Fi Rush dev team, which was only part of that studio, maybe they are still, do you know what I mean? We don't know. We have no confirmation on that right now, and I think until we do either way, it's kind of jumping to conclusions slightly. My bigger issue with this news, and I think most people's bigger issue, is it leaves the question of, okay, well, what is success for Microsoft then? Because if they don't deem Hi-Fi Rush to be a success, which it was a critical success, and yes, okay,
Like
it's not the
I'm
biggest
looking at
selling game ever, but it was still, do you know what I mean?
like yeah, like I'm looking at this like picture of like this award shelf at Tango Gameworks, and there's like one, two, three, four, five, six awards, including
Yeah.
like VGA. Like what? Like that's the thing. Is like Aaron
But,
Greenberg
mm-hmm.
publicly stated on Twitter,
Yeah.
like to counter Jeff Grubb's argument that yes, Hi-Fi Rush was a success.
But that leads me to my exact problem here, Jeff.
Yeah,
I think that this shows that what has been happening right now, and probably for the last 6 or 8 months, is that on one hand we've got the Xbox leadership, which view things one way and want to do things one way, and then I
yeah.
think we have the Microsoft suits and bean counters that have a very different opinion. And I think that's probably what it comes down to. Like, if you ask me, that Phil may have been the one to choose which studios to shut down, right?
Yeah.
But I guarantee you he wasn't the one that wanted to shut studios down. And also, we don't actually know that he was even the one that chose which studios to shut down. You know, there could have been a case where maybe they gave Satya Nadella a list, and maybe he went, well, this game didn't sell very well, this game wasn't a critical success, and these other two studios are basically doing nothing that we really care about. Shut all of those down. Do you know what I mean? Like, we don't actually know. And the other part of it is, yes, Hi-Fi Rush was a successful game to some degree, right? It had critical success, people loved it, it's one of their most beloved things for years. But we also don't actually know Tango's financials, and
Yeah.
for all we know Ghostwire didn't do very well. For all we know, Ghostwire lost Tango a lot of money. Like, we have no idea about the back
Yeah.
end situation at
But
that studio.
like the thing as well too is like Microsoft has stated that game sales aren't generally where they deem success because you're
Yeah.
putting those games on Game Pass. So like, and then now you're selling it on PlayStation
Mm-hmm.
4 or 5 or I think the Switch version I think is still coming out. So I mean you're generating like revenue
Yeah.
from other sources as well too, and you get a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
buy it on Steam because they didn't want
Yeah.
to deal with the Windows
I
Store.
think again though it goes back to that issue of, I think that maybe the gaming leadership and the Microsoft gaming people don't necessarily deem sales as the only metric for success, and I think we've seen this at Sony recently as well, where they've announced that they are now looking more at playtime and total player numbers as a bigger metric for success than they were previously, right?
Yeah.
But I think that, yeah, maybe the gaming leadership at Microsoft, at Xbox, feels that way. But I think that when it comes to the top dogs and the bean counter people, all they care about is money, right? So when they see, oh, this game hasn't sold very well, or when they see that and then they compare it to, we've just had an influx of cash from Activision because they, you know what I mean? It's just like
Yeah.
there's gonna be some odd decisions made, and I do think there's probably a bit of infighting going on right now, and I hope that they can figure out whatever it is. It's obviously we've got more news from them later, which we will get onto shortly because we'll talk about Activision. But it's just like there seems to be infighting. We heard that they couldn't make decisions about us, like they were arguing about whether a certain game should be on Game Pass or not. That seems to be resolved now, and it seems like
Yeah.
maybe the gaming leadership won that argument, but potentially it's their last chance at proving something. Um,
Well, I
we'll
mean, like,
see.
and look at that because I've got a really good argument that a lot of people are not paying attention to.
Go on then.
But I mean, like, Sarah Bond also went on, I don't know what interview thing it was, I don't know for what outlet, whatever, and she tried to answer the question of like, what do you deem a success and why did you shut down these studios? And then she just completely ignored the question and just spelled out a bunch of PR speak.
Yeah,
And it was the worst. Like, she looked terrified in that question. And I don't know if it's just her casual, like her demeanor as a, you know, because generally whenever we've seen her talk about anything, she's been very upbeat and positive because that's been the message that she's been conveying. But this
yeah.
question, oh my God, it just seemed to rattle her,
But do you
and like
know?
it
Do you
didn't
know what
seem
the
like
funny
she was
thing?
prepared.
That the funny thing about that entire interview,
Yeah,
was that it felt like she'd been thrown to the wolves a little bit, and that's what kind of gave me the impression of I'm not even sure any of these decisions recently are actually coming from the gaming team, because if you look at how her body language when they talked about closing the studios, regardless of what she said, her
yeah,
body language tells you that she didn't even want to do it. Like, it tells you that it's not something they wanted to do.
and yeah, and again, like this is just us speculating. Obviously, like we don't know what's going on with Xbox. We don't know what's going on with Sarah Bond or
Yeah, it's all
any of the
speculation.
decisions
It's
that are
all
being made.
speculation.
Yeah, but no, it felt like such a like it just felt like the question was completely being dodged,
Yeah, I
or at
agree.
least spun up in that kind of PR speak to
Yeah, it's spun up in a way where it's like I'm answering it, but the answer is so open that you can interpret it in whichever way you
yeah,
like, and that's what I've actually had this kind of PR training. That is what these people do. Um, if you've had similar training, like there'll be people out there that if you have had similar training, you are probably able to figure out what she really meant because they say things in certain way and they use certain words to mean very specific things.
yeah,
And it's just about phrasing and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, all that's interesting. But going back to Activision because it will lead us to another piece of our news as well. Obviously, there's been some weird optics this week because they've just announced that Activision has opened a new studio in Poland. I believe they're called Elsewhere Entertainment. And from what I know, they are a AAA studio that has hired some people who previously worked at Naughty Dog and also CD Projekt and a few other places. There's people that have worked on Witcher 3 and other very
yeah.
well
Last
known
of Us,
games.
Cyberpunk, and Uncharted. So you got some people from Naughty Dog
Yeah.
and some people from CD Projekt Red.
So and they are
Um,
making a narrative driven game as well. That's been confirmed. But I think that
Yeah.
the optics are a little bit weird, right? Because this is actually a really positive piece of news from an Xbox perspective in terms of you've just opened a new studio. They're working on the type of game that people want from Xbox and have wanted from Xbox for a very long time. But the reason I wouldn't even say the optics are weird. I think the timing is bad. Because announcing this 2 weeks after you've just closed 4 studios, I think makes people go, well, why have you just closed 4 studios then if you're spending hundreds of millions to open
I
another
mean, that's the
studio?
same. That's the same thing. It's like Sony, didn't they shut down Deviation Entertainment or whatever, and
And
then
then
bring
rehired
those
all of
devs
them.
in
Yeah.
for another studio?
Yeah.
Like, it's
And
so
that's
stupid.
one thing I would mention to people is sometimes there are tax and economical reasons for this, like
Yeah.
because and this is just speculation on my part, but I have a funny feeling that in a few months' time we might hear about a lot of devs from Tango being rehired, but as an American studio rather than one based in Japan. Because I
Hmm.
think that there could be costs involved in running a Japanese studio that Microsoft can kind of get around if
That's
the
the thing. It's
studio
like
is based in
Microsoft.
America.
Yeah, and Microsoft has like wanted a Japanese studio, and they basically shuttered their only one.
Yeah, I
Like
know.
they wanted to make a footprint in Japan, and
Yeah.
like it's so stupid.
Yeah, I know. It really is. It really is. But should we move on to the other bit of Activision news that
Sure,
we have?
sure. So, excuse me. Microsoft will apparently add this year's Call of Duty to Game Pass at release, it's claimed. According to the Wall Street Journal, sources with knowledge of the situation claim that this year's entry, which has yet to be officially announced, will be included in the subscription service. This would mark the first time a Call of Duty game has been included in such a service at launch, and would mean players with access to Xbox platforms may get the title for as little as $11. Microsoft plans a major shakeup of its video game strategy by releasing the coming installment of Call of Duty to its subscription service instead of the long-time lucrative approach of only selling it a la carte, according to the article. Call of Duty's inclusion on the service was a long-held sticking point in the protracted court battles following the merger of Xbox and Activision Blizzard. The game has almost uniformly been this year's best-selling. The game has almost uniformly been the year's best-selling, which Sony suggested would give Microsoft an unfair advantage if they were to offer it to PlayStation gamers at full price. The next Call of Duty game would be revealed this month through an in-game event in Warzone. Code unearthed by data miners following the release of the Modern Warfare 3 and Warzone series Season 3 Reloaded update potentially hints at plans to announce the next series entry soon, ahead of a dedicated showcase for the game that's expected next month. Earlier this month, Microsoft announced plans to hold an Xbox showcase on June 9th, followed by another digital presentation for a mystery game. The mystery game apparently is the newest Call of Duty. Um, so yeah, like this is them essentially sticking to that all first party games are going to be available day and date
And this is,
on the service.
I think, part of this is also them saying there's been a lot of rumors and discussion around Game Pass, and we want to show you that we actually still believe in Game Pass, because I think that there's one thing about Game Pass that people sort of tend to forget. And that is that, yes, okay, it's not growing as fast as they'd hoped, and growth has slowed, but it is still a massively successful service. Like, we know they're making money on it at this point. That was confirmed in court, and they've grown in subscribers since then. They are making money on the service. We know that they also make additional money because like on average, there was a stat somewhere in those court documents that on average every single subscriber to Game Pass actually spends significantly more money on the ecosystem than people who aren't subscribed. Like, and I'm talking about additional money outside of their
Yeah,
subscription, right? So Game Pass is actually responsible for quite a lot of income, not just the direct subscriber income, and I think people forget that. But
yeah,
also, every subscription service goes through this where they don't you're not always going to grow straight away. You're not always going to grow all of the time. And the other thing to remember is they are still growing. They're just not growing at the rate they expected to grow. And
Yeah,
there's
and
there's
yeah,
a
and you're still gonna
go
go
on.
ahead.
I was going to say there's a massive difference between kind of no growth and growing but not as fast as you would like.
Yeah, and I mean you're still gonna have like the majority of sales for Call of Duty is still going to be across both PC and PS5. You're still going to have
Yeah.
like millions and millions of people play it. And the one thing that I noticed that no one is talking about, that I was talking about on Twitter today, is that they're going to do the exact same thing they did with Starfield, and that they're going to have like a 3 to 5 day early access deluxe edition that's not part of Game Pass, or it's a small upgrade pack for 20 or
Yeah,
30
you'll have
bucks
a
to
you'll have
upgrade
an
to the
upgrade pack.
deluxe.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and then people will buy that. So they're still going to get revenue
Yeah. They'll
even despite the game being on
there
Game
so
Pass.
every single person, I would imagine nearly every person who's on Game Pass will pay like they did with Starfield, like they did with Forza Horizon 5. They will pay
Yeah,
the essentially what you do is you pay the DLC difference. So you pay the difference between the standard edition and whatever
yeah,
like the top edition of the game is, and that
yeah,
allows you the early access and all of the DLC as well, and then you just still get the standard part of the game for free. It's actually a really good way of doing it. I think it's beneficial for both sides. I think it allows them to make a little bit of extra income so they're not losing the full sell of the game, if you
yeah,
like. The other thing is, there's obviously a lot of speculation. They're going to put the price of Game Pass up, and they're maybe going to introduce new tiers and that kind of stuff. And I do think that stuff will probably happen, but I also think maybe it's being a little bit overblown right now in the sense of some people are talking about, oh, they're going to go up to like $25 a month or whatever. And it's like, no, I don't think they're going to do that. I don't think they're that stupid. Like,
yeah,
I think they'll do the Netflix thing where every year it will go up by maybe $1 to $2, and I think that's all that's really going to happen. Personally,
yeah. And honestly, like I'm fine with that. I get so much value out of Game Pass that I'm fine paying an
yeah,
extra couple bucks. And I know that's
I
me
already get more than
giving
enough
in to
value.
capitalism, but you know,
But also, if them putting it up by $1 to $2 every year means that they can continue to support it and continue to put more games on it, then good. Like, I think a lot of people are slightly stuck in the past where they think Xbox has no games still. And it's like, you look at this year coming up, Jeff. We now have, if Call of Duty's day one on Game Pass, that means in the
yeah,
second half of this year, you should most likely have, as far as we've heard, Avowed. Yeah, you've got Avowed, you've got Flight
yeah.
Sim, you've got Call of
Indiana
Duty,
Jones.
you've got Indiana Jones, and I believe there's another one that I'm forgetting as well. And it's like,
Yeah,
so you're talking about 5 games in a 6 month period, and
yeah, and Sony has how many?
it's just it's look, it's crazy, and I get that. Don't get me wrong, I do understand that not every single person who is on an Xbox or even subscribed to Game Pass necessarily plays every single one of these games, right? But the thing about a subscription service is, for it to be successful, you have to have a wide variety.
Yeah,
You can't just have, if with the teams that with the teams that Microsoft now have in their gaming portfolio, they could basically become the land of Western RPGs. But if all they ever released was Western RPGs, they wouldn't really have many people on the service because people who don't like those kinds of games wouldn't bother. You have to have a variety. But maybe I'm just in a unique position. I think you're somewhat similar to me, Jeff, where because we play a lot of video games, we get more value out of Game Pass. Whereas someone who maybe this year the only Xbox game they want to play is Avowed, right? it might actually make more sense for them to buy the game individually. I can
Yeah,
understand that
I saw the
argument.
same argument for Call of Duty, where if they're only interested in Call of Duty, they're not going to
Do you know
subscribe.
what? The Call of Duty one, I actually don't agree with that argument. And I'll explain why, because I think there's something people are forgetting. Most people who buy Call of Duty buy it to play it online. Yeah? And if you're playing it
Yeah,
online, you need the online membership anyway. So by the time you buy the game, and then you buy what is now Game Pass Core for your online membership, you're actually
yeah,
paying more money to do that than you would be for an Ultimate subscription.
yeah,
So even if you only play one game, in the case of Call of Duty, for the majority of people, it would still be more cost effective to just get Game Pass Ultimate. Like, and I think a lot of people are forgetting the fact that you have to pay for the online membership to play it online, and they're kind of, and so they're thinking, oh yeah, why wouldn't you just still buy the individual game for 70? And it's like, well, because they're gonna then have to pay 50 on top of that to play online anyway, and at that point, 50 on top of 70, you're talking about maybe an extra $10 on top of that, and you get all of these other games as well. I feel
mhm.
like even if you're someone who mainly plays Call of Duty, you would be silly from a cost effective value point of view to not just get Game Pass Ultimate at that point. It's different.
Yeah. I'm
It's
almost wondering if they'll make Call of Duty, like if they'll start doing certain, like the tiers essentially
yeah,
will be like, you have Game Pass Core,
yeah,
then you have Game Pass and Game Pass Ultimate or whatever.
yeah.
If um if Call of Duty, if like the big some of the bigger games will be exclusive to Ultimate,
I wondered if they'll do that. Yeah, I wondered if they'll do that.
if they'll just do that.
I know that there is.
Because I think
I know there is a speculation
Diablo,
that what they might do is basically make day one releases exclusive to the highest tier, and then have everything else where it comes later. I, I could see them potentially doing that as well, because
yeah,
that way you can have a more cost effective lower tier for people that don't really care about playing
yeah,
something straight on
and
day one.
get rid of the trials
Yeah.
for Game Pass Ultimate. Like,
Yeah.
because like a lot of people, like they'll just constantly make a new gamer
Yeah.
tag or whatever, and then the trials.
Absolutely. So it's just, yeah, I think there's a lot of things people either forget or intentionally ignore when they have these conversations. And
Mm.
I don't think everything is as black and white as people seem to think it is. Like I said, there's a massive cost effective kind of argument to be had that even if you only play Call of Duty, you're still better off getting Game Pass Ultimate. Like, you actually would be, essentially. But I think it's because most people are just forgetting that you have to pay for the online membership as well. But we'll see what happens. I'm really interested to see how much impact Call of Duty has on Game Pass, because I did see one argument that was, if you make Call of Duty next gen exclusive, anyone who hasn't upgraded yet might consider an Xbox over a PlayStation.
Yeah,
If
I
the,
saw Jeff Grubb make a tweet like that would move the needle.
and it's like, I that would be one way of potentially doing it, in the sense of, there is an argument to be had there. But I also saw Greg Miller make a strong argument that it's like, yes, that is true, but if someone's got their digital library built up on PlayStation, it's going to be hard for them to leave PlayStation. And then I think it was Paris who said, but if their entire library is only Call of Duty and Madden and games like that, yearly franchises, they're probably not going to care about leaving that library behind, because once you move on to the next game, you're on to the next game and you don't really go back.
And if you move the Xbox, all those Maddens, all those NHLs, all those Call of Duties, they're going to be available on Game Pass.
True. So I'm going to be really interested to see the impact, and that's something we'll keep an eye on. Obviously, all of the reports are saying that the game's coming in late October. I think I did see somewhere October 25th. So we'll see if that ends up being true.
Yeah, we'll find out in less than a month.
But for now, we have a lot more news to get to. So what's up next, Jeff?
Yeah, so we'll stick to Xbox for one last story here. So Microsoft has announced the Xbox Proteus controller, its newest take on the customizable accessibility controller. So the controller will begin shipping this autumn and will cost $300. That is outrageous. Players who
For an
purchase the controller,
accessible controller, that is ridiculous price. I'm sorry, that's crazy.
yeah, that's awful. Players who purchase the controller during the pre-order window will receive a 15% off discount. The controller is made of several balls that snap together to form whatever shape is most comfortable for the user. According to the manufacturer BioWave, the controller will work with Xbox Series consoles as well as Xbox One and PC at launch. The controller will not support PlayStation control consoles or Nintendo Switch, although BioWave has said that it would like to work with both platform holders in the future. Um, PlayStation had revealed their own controller as well too. Um, you know, but $300 is one,
Yeah.
not accessible.
No.
Like, I don't know. Like, is BioWave using like solid gold parts
Don't get me
or
wrong.
like
Don't get me
legitimate
wrong.
platinum?
This kind of tech, especially because of the way they're doing it, is expensive. But I'd love to know what their
Yeah,
margins are on that price, because if you're making something for the accessible crowd, yes, price it in a way that you make a profit because you still have to run a business, but price it
yeah,
in the most accessible way. You don't have to make a massive profit on each of these things. Um, I'm not too familiar with this accessible controller. I've seen it. Obviously, I haven't had a chance to sort of play around with it yet, and I don't need to use accessible controllers, but having a disability and previously working with other people that have had disabilities, I know the difference they can make, and I know how important they are. And
yeah,
Xbox's original accessible controller, which is one where you can essentially plug different switches in and then map those switches to different buttons and things like that. That was an amazing design. It did also cost a little bit too much in my opinion, but it was much more affordable than this. I think the advantage of this one is the modularity of it, in the sense of it's a thing that can fit in someone's hand. If they only have one hand they can use, they can make it into a shape which is most comfortable for them. I do think there's a lot of use cases, but that price needs to change, I think.
yeah. It's super expensive. Like again, like a lot of price comes down to volume in regards to like how many of things that you're making, just because you're able to like bring in a lot of like resources and materials essentially at a cheaper cost when you're buying in bulk. The same thing of like, when you're buying groceries and stuff, like why something is so expensive, like
Yeah.
say like organic or anything like that. It's
hmm
because the stores don't order the amount to bring that volume down.
And that's why,
So
if this thing for whatever reason ends up being really popular, you actually might see that price come down a little bit, because that does happen
yeah,
sometimes.
I mean, the same thing with the Xbox memory cards for the series consoles and stuff is they've kind of started to come down, but largely because they've allowed third-party companies to kind of distribute
Yes.
that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, fantastic controller. I would love to see it thrive, but I think at that price, I think it's just not going to.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, unfortunately, tech is always costly, but when we're talking about accessibility stuff, I'd like to see some sort of way that we can make these things more accessible from a price point of view for people. And I actually think,
Yeah,
maybe I'm crazy, Jeff, but one last thing on this story. I think there is one way to actually make it far more accessible, and that is if governments didn't charge tax on these kinds of items. You know, like
Yeah.
you know how there's certain items that are not you don't pay any tax on. I feel like accessible based items should be items where you don't pay any tax because
Hmm.
that would save a lot of money in the costs here. So I think maybe that's something that
Yeah,
should be considered.
depending on like yeah, depending on your state or province and stuff like that. Like, because I mean, in like here, in Alberta, I only pay 5% sales tax, but I don't have PST. I only have GST.
Yeah,
So some provinces have PST and GST, so they pay
even
like
more.
almost 10%. Yeah, it's outrageous. And I mean, I don't know what taxes are in the states and stuff like that, but considering most publishers and stuff are like, oh no, our head office is in New Guinea. We don't have to pay taxes here. Like that's how it works.
Yeah,
Sucks.
yeah, for sure.
All right. So Sony Interactive Entertainment has named Herman Hulst and Hideki Nishino as the new joint CEOs of the PlayStation business, succeeding Jim Ryan starting in June. Hulst, who was previously head of PlayStation Studios and Guerrilla Games, will become CEO of the new studio business group responsible for all PlayStation game content, as well as bringing its franchises to new mediums such as film and television. Nishino, who was previously SVP of SIE's Platform Experience Group, will be appointed CEO of SIE's Platform Business Group, which will see him continue to be responsible for technology, products, services, and platform experiences, as well as third party publishing and developer relations and commercial operations, including sales and marketing of hardware, services, and peripherals. Um, yeah, so like honestly, I knew Herman Hulst was going to get some type of promotion here.
Yeah, I did.
Um,
Yeah.
but I did not expect the dual CEO thing. But then
So,
it makes sense. You're putting people in their
mm,
strengths.
so I kind of did, and I'll explain why. If you look at PlayStation's history, other than when Jim Ryan's been in charge, they've always effectively had two different people in charge of different aspects of that business. Um, and with Jim Ryan, we do know that initially Sean Layden wasn't meant to leave, right? Sean Layden was essentially meant to co-run PlayStation with Jim Ryan, but they had different philosophies and they didn't agree on things, and that's
Hmm.
why it went the way it went. So I'm not too surprised they've gone this direction, and I actually think it's really positive because yes, some people might say, well, Herman's been in charge of studios anyway. And it's like, he has, but let's also remember he hasn't had enough power to fully decide their direction. His job has essentially just been, let's make sure all of these studios are doing the best job they can at what they're being asked to do, but I'm not the one setting what
Yeah.
they're asked to do. I guarantee you, Herman wasn't the one who decided, let's make 10 live service games. Like, that was not a Herman Holst decision. And having him
Yeah.
now being able to steer that ship on the software side is a really good thing. And I think that splitting those responsibilities, and now you have, Nishino, who was part of Platform Experience before. He was actually a major part of PlayStation doing their accessibility controller as well. So credit to him on that. I think that it essentially sounds like Nishino is going to be running the more business side of stuff, and then Herman will just be essentially in charge of the actual game experiences and what they do with the IP. And I think that that's a really
Yeah.
good way of doing things because, like you said, you're putting people in areas where they are best suited and where have kind of already been. I do find it interesting that, we see, if we look at Xbox, what do we see over there? We see that there's different leaders for different things. They have Phil as this overall kind of guy, but Sarah Bond
Yeah, but
leads Xbox.
even then, Phil responds to like what is it, the head of Microsoft. So I mean,
Yeah,
even he's not the head of like Xbox in
Yeah.
final stay type of thing.
But
Um,
then Herman and Nishino wouldn't be either, right? Like they still,
yeah,
yes, they run PlayStation, but they still have to answer to Sony themselves. They still have to answer to the mothership, you know. Um,
yeah,
but I just find it interesting that we see a lot of companies going for this kind of leadership type thing now, and then we have Nintendo who seem to like sticking to that one individualized leader with. And I think, there's advantages to both ways of doing it. I think that when you have one person, you get one core vision, and that is what's executed, and there's kind of
yeah. But Nintendo also has that thing where like they've got like their head of Japan and then their head of like Nintendo of America. So
true.
they kind of do still have the two, whereas on PlayStation you have Herman and Yoshino like worldwide,
That's true. That's
for
true, actually. Yeah,
so
that's
so
very
Nintendo
true.
kind of does have that structure.
I am
It's regional based.
I'm very excited to see what this means for changes in PlayStation, because I do think there will be changes. Um I think the problem with any of this kind of stuff is when you get changes at that level of leadership, it actually takes years to play out before you see it as the public. So nothing will change for us for years, but there will be decisions they make
Yeah.
now which affect things 3 years down the line, and then we'll go, oh, that was a Herman thing, or
Yeah,
oh, that was a
I don't
Nishino
I
decision.
honestly I don't think we're going to see any change until PlayStation 6. I
I
think that
agree.
will be
I
like
agree.
the most noticeable swap for kind of what's going on. Maybe they maybe
Absolutely.
even launch a console that actually has 1 gig of storage.
I'm glad that they've made this decision fairly quickly though, because obviously Jim Ryan left a couple of months ago. I think they could have languished in trying to find the right person for ages, and I think that actually the fact they've made this decision just within a couple of months shows their belief in these people as well to do their roles. And I did see a nice thing. I think it might have been IGN who was saying that Herman's rise in gaming is actually very similar to Phil Spencer's, where they both kind of started at the bottom, and then over the years they've they've built their way up out of the more development side of things and the individual
Yeah.
studio side of things, and they're now, running essentially the two biggest boys there are. So yeah, this is good news. I'm very happy about it personally.
Alrighty. Let's see what we got here. So yeah, some of the big news as well too has been where am I here? All right, so Grand Theft Auto 6 apparently will release in fall of 2025. The new release window was confirmed by Take-Two as part of its financial report for the fiscal year 2024. Listing some of the games planned for the next 3 fiscal years, the company said GTA 6 will be launching in the fall of calendar 2025. It's also confirmed development of NBA 2K25 and WWE 2K25. Discussing its projected revenue for the fiscal year of 2025, Take-Two noted that GTA 6 won't be releasing during that period. Our outlook reflects a narrowing of Rockstar Games' previously established window of calendar 2025 to fall of 2025 for Grand Theft Auto 6. Consumer anticipation for the title is unprecedented, and our expectations for its commercial input continue to increase. So yeah, like obviously Grand Theft Auto 6 is one of the biggest and most anticipated games to come out or um, uh, to eventually come out. GTA 5, they actually just announced that GTA 5 has surpassed 200 million copies sold. This is according to Take Two. And I was trying to find information about it today, but a lot of the sales for GTA 5 have come for the fact that it's cheaper to buy a new copy of GTA 5 because it
Than the
included
shark
shark
card.
card
Yeah,
cash.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I can't find how much shark card cash comes with it because
Yeah.
when I worked at Best Buy, we used to have people come in and they would buy 20, 30, 40, 50 copies of Grand Theft Auto 5 every single time it went on
If
sale.
if I was to guess, and this is just pure speculation on my part, I think in
Yeah.
terms of traditional sales, GTA 5 is probably around the 120 million mark. Because I think if you look at the other Rockstar games, Red Dead 2 is their second best selling game. I think that's on 50 million, right? GTA
Yeah,
5
like I could,
has obviously been
yeah.
released now on 3 generations. So I don't know, like, I feel like there's a huge chunk of that 200 million sales that are not
Yeah, I would
actual
say,
sales of the game.
yeah, like I would say it's probably closer to about, I'm gonna say anywhere between 80 million to 115 million, like
Okay.
within that gap. Because again, like yeah, like a lot, like these people would come in every single time the game was on sale and they would buy 30, 50, 60, 70 copies. They would often buy us out because there would be three or four of them every single time
Wow.
it went on
Wow.
sale. And so because like again, like they were buying it for the shark card cash, like because I think that you get a code and I think you can sell that code.
Yeah.
And so then they were selling the code and the game. So I mean, like they were making a ton of money. So like
And it
those
was it
people
was
were
a,
doing
it
it,
was a more cost
and
effective
other
way.
people were
I
doing it.
know that, because I sometimes see it even on digital sell, and it's like they will sell a copy of the game with the highest value shark card included, and it will
I
be
think that's
cheaper.
the only way that you can buy it on Steam now. Because I was reading that apparently you can only buy a shark card equipped version of GTA 5. You can't buy just GTA 5.
Interesting, interesting.
Because I was trying to look up and see how much it came in, but every search result was just talking about like the different
But yeah,
tiers of
there's
the
and
shark
and
card.
look, I'm not trying to belittle what GTA 5 has done. Like at the end of the day,
I will. I'll totally.
at the end of the day, technically, it still has sold a lot of copies. I just think that when you're looking at purely traditional sales of people who have actually bought the game to play the game and not bought the game because of some shark card value, I think those
Yeah.
sales are significantly lower. And I think,
Yeah.
you know,
And like again, like they've got a lot is riding on GTA 6 because like again the company just like talked about like some
however,
pretty drastic financials.
I'll say it right now. Well, we'll talk about the financials in a second, but
Yeah.
GTA 6 isn't coming till 2026. Like that game's getting delayed. I'm pretty certain
I don't
at
know.
this point. I
I think the fall 2025 like I I don't know. I can definitely see it
don't
because
get me wrong.
I could see I could see them being done major development by spring.
I don't get me wrong. I can see it because I think the game is probably playable now. But
Yeah.
but in just if I look at Rockstar's history, every single one of their games has suffered at least one delay. And
It,
so,
it, yeah, and it could be them getting out in front of it. Like maybe they wanted to release it in spring
oh yeah,
2025,
true,
and then they're like,
true.
you know what? Hey, let's just put a release date on there because then we can just spend the next little months polishing.
That's true. That's true.
Um,
I hope it does come in
could be.
2025 because I have been waiting some time for for this game. So
I like for me the only thing that is going to make me excited to play it is if the running isn't that stupid leaning run that they do in Grand Theft Auto all the time. It drives me fucking nuts.
so I guess that means I'm reviewing this game for us then, Jeff, when it comes.
Well, I mean, we're sure as fuck not getting a code. Um, well, actually, maybe you've got the end through that there, so maybe go for it. Yeah, I'll definitely not be reviewing Grand Theft Auto.
Fair. I'll
Um,
be doing that one then. Um,
yeah,
but yeah,
we'll see if the
I
car is
do
controlling
I
both
do
still.
want to talk slightly about Take Two's financials because that was
Sure.
crazy, and that to me actually kind of put a different perspective on things they've been doing recently. Because what was it they
Well,
lost
yeah,
two point something billion, I believe.
yeah, I don't know if it's on this story here, but let me touch on this one and then go into that one because this one actually adds a little bit probably context to what you're going to talk about. And that is Take-Two CEO Strauss Zelnick has claimed that the publisher did not shut down Private Division Studios' Roll 7 and Intercept Games, despite reports suggesting it planned to. Last month, the publisher said it planned to lay off 5% of its workforce, or around 600 people, as part of a cost-cutting measure. This was followed by Bloomberg, which stated that it has seen documentation revealing that the two casualties of this restructuring were Roll 7 and Intercept Games. However, in a new interview with IGN, Zelnick appeared to suggest that neither studio had been closed, but didn't clarify their actual status. We didn't shutter those studios, to be clear, and we are always looking at a release schedule across all studios to make sure that it makes sense. So we were being very judicious because we are in the middle of a cost reduction program that we've already concluded and are now fully rolling out. We've announced that we're saving 165 million in existing and future costs, but we haven't shuttered anything. So yeah, like it was talked about how Take Two has lost, what is it,
2.9 is 2.9 billion
billion,
quarterly loss. So to put that in
2.9.
perspective, that's in one quarter. They've lost $2.9 billion. So this cost cutting, I think they need it, Jeff.
Yeah, it says the stock is reacting to pre-market trading to the company's fiscal quarter earnings, which reported a net loss of 2.9 billion. So that's a first quarter loss of
Yeah,
2.9
that's not
billion.
even a yearly
Where is
loss.
where is that money? Is it all just the GTA developer? Because like there's what probably going to be 600-700 people working on that game.
I mean, they can't be spending that much on that game, though, surely. Surely they can't
No,
be
like
spending that much
where do
on
you
that game.
lose 2.9 billion? Like is it yen? Like um
It's when
I
I
don't
when
know.
I saw that number, and look, I still don't like closures and stuff, but when I saw that
Yeah.
number, I was like, oh, okay, that puts it in a completely different perspective because they cannot continue to lose that sort of money, and I don't care how big of a business they are, you cannot lose $2.9 billion every quarter. Like that's ridiculous. Like, if PlayStation was losing that kind of money every quarter, Jeff, they wouldn't last very long. They'd be shut down. Like, it's if an Xbox the same. Like, I don't understand where they're losing that money personally. It doesn't make sense.
Like in the cushions, in their couch cushions. I'm gonna read this studio here. So take a look at the two. Take a look at Take Two, that stock on the move, posting a 2.9 billion loss in the fourth quarter, sending its stock lower. The company also announced its Grand Theft Auto will not be released till fall 2025. That's huge news for the company. You're looking at losses of about 2/10% here in the free market trading. Yeah, this is from Yahoo Finance, so it's gibberish.
So
I don't
so
know what
some
they.
of it so some of the loss included a goodwill charge, but I'm not sure on what that actually means. They apparently had a 2.1 billion goodwill charge as well as 300 million in acquisition related expenses and nearly 100 million in restructuring costs. So yeah, whatever a goodwill charge is, that's essentially cost them this money.
I don't know. Maybe there's some type of like weird like payment hush money type thing going. Maybe somebody took
Does
some of it.
Vince
I don't know.
McMahon work for Take Two?
Yeah, no. Let's see if there's any human trafficking mentioned on their LinkedIn stuff.
Jesus
Don't think so.
Christ. Uh, but yeah, this
Yeah, who
so put
knows?
it from I don't know. Maybe you're not the same as me, Jeff, but for me, this gave a whole different perspective on what's actually going on at Take Two.
Yeah, I mean that's a lot of money for one quarter. Um, like I don't know how much money Grand Theft Auto is bringing in every single day still.
A lot, I would
Um,
imagine.
but yeah, like I'm assuming like Grand Theft Auto 6 is going to make a shit ton of money.
Yeah.
when it comes out. And like
That
saw
that money
Jeff
they've
Grubb
that
talking
money
about it.
they've just lost will be made back within like 2 days, I would imagine.
Probably. I mean, like I saw Jeff Grubb talking about how like Grand Theft Auto 6 is probably like the first like major point that next gen will kind of like see a boost in sales, that people are
Well, it
like
will, because people will upgrade for
waiting.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, because like right now, like there were studies showing that like what is it, 60% of like all games that are being played right now are available
Hmm.
on like previous gen consoles, because
And we
everybody's still
also
playing Fortnite.
and we also
Everybody's still playing that
saw
stuff.
PlayStation's numbers the other day, where they said that half of their monthly active users are still playing on PS4. And I do think,
But
look,
they believe in generation.
I
Jordan, they
do
believe in generation.
I think that there is some element of people don't feel the need to upgrade because we've had a lot longer of a cross-gen period.
Yeah,
I think that's number
it's
one.
definitely been a weird one.
Um,
Very unprecedented.
and then I think number two is, even though there have been some next-gen only games, I don't think many of them have been like, oh my god, I must play that yet. Whereas once you start getting to the point, we mentioned it with Call of Duty earlier, I don't know that the next Call of Duty is going to be next-gen only. But if it is, I guarantee you that will bump next-gen sales as well. Like GTA will do the same. I think we've got a
See,
lot of
and
games
the
that are coming up that will do the same.
and the thing that you could do, like if you really wanted to, you could go like, oh, Call of Duty is going to be coming out, like the next Call of Duty, like Black Ops 4 or whatever they're calling it. It will be available on Xbox Series S, X, PS5, and PC at launch, with PS4, Xbox One, and Switch in spring of 2025.
Yeah. So that they still
You
get it,
know,
but later.
exactly. Like they could do something like that. Um, but I
Yeah,
don't know.
it'd be
Like it's
interesting
hard
to
to say. It
see.
just depends
And
on.
I think that, look, GTA is GTA, right? So GTA is going to. Even if GTA, and I think GTA is a next gen exclusive, I think they've sort of said
Yes,
that. But
there's
even
no chance that thing's running on old hardware. They're not going to pull a cyberpunk with this one.
But even if it wasn't a next gen exclusive, I still think GTA is the kind of game that would make people upgrade, because it's the kind of game where people will want the best experience they can
I
have.
think it's still going to make people want to upgrade, because you're going to see this game released on Xbox, the next Xbox, and PS6 as like these 60 FPS versions with ray
Yeah.
tracing
I mean,
and yada yada
especially
yada. But
especially if this game, if GTA 5 comes out in full 2025, everything we're hearing right now is suggesting that Xbox are doing their next gen Xbox literally a year later. So,
and
you know,
and yeah, it was also confirmed that Xbox, apparently their next console is going to go through ARM architecture. PlayStation just filed a bunch of tech reports that talk about ARM architecture,
these
because
consoles are
everybody's
going to be
it's
quite different.
yeah, which is why the backwards compatibility uh, program has been kind of kickstarted back up again, because they're going to have to
Figure
find a
out a
way of
way to make
converting
it
all this
work.
stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and I mean that's why mobile games look so good, for the power that is behind those consoles, and why Sarah Bond said that it's going to be the biggest technological leap
Yeah,
that we've seen in consoles.
yeah.
And a lot of people assume that meant just visuals and frame rate. I'm like, no, that's the architecture
The
that these
actual
games are
core
going to
of the
run on.
console is going to be so
Yeah,
different that, yeah,
and
yeah.
it'll allow for handheld versions. Like I wouldn't be a bit surprised if the next Xbox follows the exact same route as the Switch, where you can take it on the go, and then you've got Game Pass right then and there
Yeah. If they
everywhere you
do
go.
something like that, I couldn't see it failing, in the sense of that's what people have wanted for years from any of these
Yeah.
platforms. So
And
if they
Japan's
do
the handheld market, which is why the Switch have sold a billion fucking units,
yeah.
is because that is what Japan
So
craves.
it's going to be really
So
interesting to
it's
see. Let's just hope that Take-Two stay in business long enough to see that generation.
Yeah, God, in a couple months we're gonna be reporting like, oh, Take-Two has folded and Grand Theft Auto has been sold to Warner Brothers. Who
Oh god,
knows?
I hope not.
That's fine. They got Rocksteady. They love them.
So what else do we have here,
All right.
Jeff?
Yeah, so we got Dauntless and Fae Farm Studios. Phoenix Labs confirms layoffs and game cancellations. While the number of layoffs have been made by the company has not been confirmed, other employees have stated that it's around 140 people. Canada-based Phoenix Labs, which offices in Vancouver and Montreal, said the decision to restructure was a last resort to ensure the studio's survival. We are reorganizing Phoenix Labs to focus on our best in-class live service titles, Dauntless and Fae Farm, and serving their communities, it said in a statement published on its LinkedIn page. This unfortunately means canceling work on other projects at the studio, which will impact many of our colleagues immediately. We are giving notices to everyone whose roles are affected. This restructure has not come easily, and truthfully, it's a last resort to ensure Phoenix Labs can survive and thrive in the long time. Um, yeah, so I mean, they were founded in 2014 by a bunch of ex-Riot game developers. They released Dauntless, which was, I believe, that like Monster Hunter style
Yeah,
game that
yeah.
didn't
I
quite
actually
catch on.
played. I played probably a good 10 to 20 hours of that game, and
Yeah, I only
it
played a
was
few hours.
it was like a more arcadey version of Monster Hunter. I actually quite enjoyed it. It was good fun. Um, I
Yeah,
just think that because it was so much like Monster Hunter, and around that time Monster Hunter World was blowing up and all these other kind of things, I think it didn't find the audience that it perhaps deserved to have. Um,
yeah. I mean, it's the same with like Wild Hearts. Is like, I think it did a lot of things better than Monster Hunter. I fucking love that game,
mm,
but I think with Monster Hunter, it's such a niche audience, anyways.
yeah, that they
That
just
Monster
stick
Hunter
to what
World,
they know,
you
right?
know, yeah, like I don't know. It sucks to see the studios lose, especially since I think Vancouver's got a lot of like good tax breaks for a lot of that kind of stuff, and
Yeah,
I would assume Montreal does as well. Um, so yeah, it kind of sucks to see like the studio close, especially like a small studio. And I mean, losing 140 people, like it, it's a lot,
yeah, absolutely,
especially to
absolutely.
that kind of
That
studio.
that that sucks, and you know, it it's just the state the whole industry's in right now, unfortunately. And we'll carry on talking about it every single week, it seems, for the rest of time.
Yeah. So included in things that have either been let go or canceled, this one really sucked. Because
Yes.
like I got a lot of good memories playing the division. I mean, you and me, we played with like Gary Whitta.
Yeah.
Me and my friend, our friends like Jonathan and my friend Rebecca, we used to just play the shit ton out
Yeah,
of the
we
division.
played so much of that game.
Yeah, and it seems that Ubisoft has canceled the Division Heartland. This is the game that we saw little bits and pieces of. I'm assuming it was fairly late on. It was made by Red Store Entertainment, which is the previous like the Rainbow Six guys. They also did the fake game that you see on Mythic Quest as well too. The company confirmed that development of the project has ceased during its quarterly earnings call on Wednesday. In line with the increased selectivity of our investment, we have decided to stop development on the Division Heartland and are redeploying our resources to bigger opportunities like X Defiant and Rainbow Six Siege. The good old Call of Duty Activision approach. Heartland was set to be a free to play multiplayer survival action shooter set in the fictional rural community of Middle America. Dugent called the cancellation, he's the chief financial officer, called the cancellation a difficult but necessary and important decision. Developed by Red Storm Entertainment, Heartland was planned as a free to play multiplayer shooter for PC and consoles. The PvEVP focused survival action game was set to be set in fictional rural America Midwest town of Silver Creek, which had been left in ruins following the spread of the dollar flu. During today's earning call, Ubisoft CEO Yves Gamel, I can never say his last name, also said Heartland didn't align with the company's plans to sharpen its strategic focus on two verticals, open world adventures and native games as a service title. This is that same kind of thinking where they're like, yeah, we're going to cancel The Last of Us multiplayer because we don't believe in it. Did you believe in it at the start? Is that what started the development? Or like, did you like, we'll see how it goes for a couple years?
So my, I'm not too surprised that this got cancelled. I do think it's weird. Well, I say that. I would normally think that it's weird for a game to be cancelled so far into development, but I had heard that this game had undergone major changes over the course of development and maybe got restarted at some point and all that kind of stuff. Um, I just hope that it means. I just hope that this doesn't mean that we don't get a Division 3 eventually, because I know Massive Entertainment, the core Division developer, who is obviously leading the Star Wars Outlaws game, and they also were part of the Avatar team as well, I believe.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they would like to return to Division at some point, because that's their
And
baby.
Division 2 saw like, yeah, and Division 2 saw like a resurgence of players where they're like, yeah, we're done with it. And players are like, no, we want more.
Yeah.
And so they,
They
you know,
carried on.
like,
Like, the thing is, they released that DLC, and people just, I don't know. Like, I'm hundreds of hours into Division 2 at this point, and if anyone said to me, "Oh yeah, I've bought it and I want to play it," I would play it with them. No questions asked. Like, it's an amazing game. I'd like to see more Division. Heartland being cancelled really sucks. But let's
yeah.
talk about something I think that's more positive for Ubisoft, because we didn't get to talk about it the other day. We planned to record on that day, but they've revealed Assassin's Creed Shadows, which is coming in November the 15th. Obviously, this is the long-awaited Assassin's Creed set in Japan. How are you feeling about it, Jeff?
Well, I mean, hey, it's got an authentic character that actually existed in reality.
Apparently everybody
Yasuke,
hates that though,
Yasuke.
Jeff. Apparently no one thinks that's real and it's not historically accurate. That's what everybody's saying online, because they don't know
Dude had an
history.
anime based off this.
Yeah, I
He
know.
was in Neo.
I know.
Like, everyone's like, yeah, I don't know.
These
it's so
people are
funny. It's
these
like,
people are crazy because they just don't know. First of all, they don't know history if they think this isn't historically accurate. Second of all,
yeah,
you've never held Assassin's Creed to being historically accurate any other time in history, so why are you trying to do it now? We all know why, so go away with you people, please. We don't want any of you here. However, I really liked this trailer. Yes, it's just a CG tone setting trailer. I understand that. But Ubisoft do a good job at these, because they do give you some sense of what the game is going to be.
and they have talked about some aspects of it. They said that the world is pretty much just as big as Egypt was in Origins. However, they said they're being smart on the level design in regards to like some of the mountain ranges will feel like mountains. Like they won't just feel like
Oh,
background
nice,
JPEGs and stuff like
nice.
that. That's nice. And it's made by the same team that did Odyssey, which is, to me is still like the best Assassin's Creed game out there. Like I
Interesting.
fucking loved it.
Odyssey isn't the
Um,
one. Odyssey isn't the one that personally clicked with me very much, but I actually found it too big, and I think that scaling back slightly to that Origin size of game instead is probably a really positive move. So I'm happy to hear that.
yeah, and I found Valhalla big. I didn't really find Odyssey that big, but it could just be hindsight. The one thing that I want them to bring back from Odyssey though is the target system, like the assassin, like
That was cool.
the
Yeah,
system where like they're like, oh, this person frequents the store on like at noon and stuff like that, and then you'd have to track down and like survey
yeah.
and pay attention,
I
and
al-
then maybe that's her
mm.
her thing with like assassin targets.
I also like, for people who've been long time Assassin's Creed fans, this team also made Assassin's Creed Syndicate, which I actually think is an underappreciated Assassin's
I
Creed
played
game.
like an hour of it.
Yeah, I think is underappreciated because it was a technical mess when it first came out, and
Yeah,
you know,
for me, that was still part of that era of Assassin's Creed where I just didn't like moving the character around. It felt kind of stiff and
yeah,
some of the combat
I can
things and stuff.
understand that.
It's just
But
one
what
game
I
I
do
never
like
get
is
over.
one of the things they seem to have taken from there, and we don't have confirmation on this yet, but based on how they're advertising the game and that kind of stuff, it seems like they've gone back to it. Is this doesn't seem like a game where you're going to choose as one character or the other. You're
No, you
probably
play
going
as
to
both.
play
They've
as
already
both.
that's already been stated. Yeah,
And
like you'll jump between both.
and also, just like in Syndicate, they're going to have like their own skill sets. So like you have because you have the female who is more like a shinobi. She does stealth. She's the only
Name?
yeah, she's the only one with the hidden blade. Her hidden blade's cool because it goes sideways. That's really cool. Um, and then you've obviously got Yasuke, who is more of like a tank. I imagine he's gonna play more like an Eivor from Valhalla, where it's get in there, fight, use different weapons. He's not really gonna be the stealth guy, and I like that because it's that two different
I wonder if we'll
styles
see
of play.
Nobunaga. It's the guy from like Onimusha and like Dynasty Warriors.
It's
Yeah,
gonna be
no,
so
it
interesting.
yeah, it looks absolutely
I can't
absolutely incredible.
I can't wait to see gameplay because my thing is, so what I heard on this, and I think a few other people have heard it, there was a report that this is actually going to be the last RPG Assassin's Creed. So I'm
What's up?
interested. So I'm interested to see. And I think part of that is probably because Mirage was actually received quite well. I think they've realized that there is a crowd for that older style of Assassin's Creed game again.
Yeah, but you can have both.
You
You can have
can,
both because
and
like
I think
for
you
me it's
should.
like Mirage. I think Mirage. I think Mirage was fine. Like I certainly enjoyed it, but I mean like I would so much more prefer an
You like,
Origins and Odyssey
yeah,
and
you like the big,
Valhalla. I like that stuff.
RPGs, yeah, for sure. But I'm interested to see if they have kind of taken any lessons from Mirage.
Yeah. Oh
And
yeah, if you can make it like a 40 to 50 hour game max, great. Because like Valhalla was over 100
yeah,
hours
way
and that
too
game
big.
was just way too
Valhalla
fucking
was way
long.
too big.
Yeah. I just want the game to play like Odyssey and Valhalla
Yeah.
and like feel like that game, but just smaller.
Yeah, and my thing
But
is
I don't want
that's
15 to 20.
that's why I really like the comparison to Origins, because I actually really liked Origins because
Yeah,
I felt
Origins was
like
fantastic.
Origins was the best of both worlds, where it was we're doing something different with the RPG stuff, but it still feels like an Assassin's Creed game as well because we haven't fully moved away from that yet. Whereas Odyssey and Valhalla didn't need to be Assassin's Creed games. Like, they could have been their completely own thing. Didn't really need Assassin's Creed. So I'm interested to see what approach they take with Assassin's Creed Shadows here. And kind of, are they going to go back a little bit more to slightly closer to the traditional Assassin's Creed? I suspect they will. Like, it's still going to be an RPG, obviously. But I think the fact they're comparing it to Origins more than Odyssey or Valhalla kind of tells you what they're aiming for. And I'm very excited about that. I can't wait to see more. I believe we've got a Ubisoft Forward coming up on the 10th of June, I want to say that it is.
Something like that, yeah. Like June 9th or 10th, yeah.
So that's going to be interesting to see, and I'll definitely be tuning into that. The game, like I said, is coming out on November the 15th. There is a really cool looking collector's edition for it. That's
Yeah, I see the cost on that thing.
Yeah.
Fucking hell, it's like you get that or the Xbox like accessibility controller.
Yeah, that or a console.
Yeah, fucking
It's
hell.
crazy. But yeah, so a
Ridiculous.
little bit of bad Ubisoft news, but a little bit of good news as well. And guess what, Jeff? Guess what's been floating around before we move on from Ubisoft? Apparently we're gonna see the Splinter Cell remake this year. We're gonna see some gameplay.
That'll be interesting. I'm just wondering like who's gonna be voicing
Yeah, I know.
Sam Fisher.
Yeah, I know. That's
probably not gonna be Mike Ironside.
I would imagine
Way
not.
cool
I would
enough.
imagine not. But I did like to see in some of the gameplay details for Assassin's Creed Shadows, they talked about being able to put out lights and things like that. And I think it was Ryan McCaffrey who said they're literally making a Splinter Cell game inside of Assassin's Creed. Like, but you would imagine Ubisoft.
Well, I mean, they've been They've been making a Witcher game inside of Assassin's Creed for the
True,
past decade.
and
So
you would imagine Ubisoft with all the teams they have, they probably do kind of work together and go, we're working on this tech for this game. Why don't Do you want to implement it in your game? Like if they're doing it for, if they've been
I mean,
doing
yeah,
it
if they're
for
using
the Splinter Cell
Anvil,
remake anyway, do you know what I mean?
yeah, like if the Splinter Cell remake is being made in Anvil, then totally, because that's been powering the Assassin's
For
Creed
sure.
games.
However, Watch Dogs is no more, and that's a shame.
It is what it is.
Yes.
All right. So, following in the footsteps of Fallout, Amazon Prime Video has placed a series order for a Tomb Raider adaptation from Phoebe Waller-Bridge. The British actress, screenwriter, and producer who won Emmy, Golden Globe, and BAFTA awards for her work on Fleabag will serve as writer and executive producer on the TV show. The series, based on the iconic Tomb Raider video game franchise, follows the adventures of the world-famous archaeologist and adventurer Laura Croft. It's being produced by Crystal Dynamics and Amazon MGM Studios and will premiere exclusively on Prime Video in more than 240 countries and territories worldwide. If I could tell my teenage self that this was happening, I think she'd explode, Waller Bridge said via Deadline. Tomb Raider has been a huge part of my life, and I feel incredibly privileged to be bringing it to television with such passionate collaborators. Laura Croft means a lot to me, and she does to so many, and I can't wait to go on this adventure, bats and all. As previously reported, TV show forms part of a wider partnership between Crystal Dynamics and Amazon, which also includes plans for a new film and a video game. It was announced in December of 2022 that Amazon Games will publish the next Tomb Raider game. This yet untitled game is a single player narrative driven action adventure that is an all new next chapter to Lara Croft's legendary explorations in the Tomb Raider franchise, according to Embracer. Yeah, so I mean, I think they're also planning another movie. I'm not 100% too
Yeah.
sure, but yeah, they want to do a big Tomb Raider cinematic thing where the games and the shows apparently connect in some way.
I mean, I think doing a show is the right thing to do because I think the problem with Lara Croft in a movie is you can't explore the character very much and you don't have enough time to actually really develop anything. Whereas over the course of a series, you can do a lot of stuff and you can go deeper into things. Um, and I think that if that series is something that then leads to a movie happening later where you can spend a bigger budget and do a bigger thing, that's really cool. I'm excited to see that. Obviously, I can't wait to see the next Tomb Raider game as well because I do like those. Um, yeah, I'm really sort of happy with this news. I think it's going to be interesting to see. We're going to see many more adaptations as we continue to go forward. Um, but yeah, for me, it's more about the game, and I can't wait to see more of that whenever that comes. Obviously, they have a weird history because Tomb Raider used to be a Square Enix thing, and that was one of those Tomb Raider games was actually a timed exclusive to Xbox, and then Square
Hmm.
Enix decided that Xbox didn't exist for about a decade, Jeff. But
Yeah.
what have they decided recently, Square Enix?
Square Enix has admitted publicly we fucked up. No, all right. Square Enix has published a new medium-term business plan, which includes making its AAA games multi-platform going forward. The plan, which the publisher has dubbed the Square Enix Reboots and Awakens, which has dubbed Square Enix Reboots and Awakens, lays out a 3-year strategy which will hopes to lead to long-term growth. One of the 4 pillars of this plan, which involves strengthening customer contact points, will see the publisher shift to a multi-platform strategy. The plan says Square Enix will aggressively pursue a multi-platform strategy that includes Nintendo platforms, PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. By doing this, it will be able to build an environment where more customers can enjoy our titles in regards to major franchises and AAA titles, including catalog titles. While it isn't explicitly mentioned in the plan, the recent release of Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth are the most obvious examples of Square Enix releasing a platform exclusive AAA title. This new plan appears to suggest that platform exclusivity may not be in Square Enix's best interests anymore, and that it may even be planning to release some of its previous catalog titles on new formats, be that Xbox consoles or the successor to the Nintendo Switch. Elsewhere in the document, Square Enix stresses that it has to shift from quantity to quality and focus on delivering games that are enjoyable by more players. It aims to launch titles that ensure excitement that will bolster loyalty to our brand, placing top priority on bringing smiles to our customers' faces and keep and build on the fan bases for our major franchises by regularly releasing AAA titles. The plan appears to be the outcome of an announcement made during Square Enix's financial results briefing in February, where President Takashi Kiru said the company was conducting a fundamental review of its development process to improve the quality of its games, and that more information would come in the spring. During its latest financial results released today, the publisher confirmed it had canceled a number of projects because they were incompatible with the group's revised approach to the development of HD games, which reflects such objectives as multi-platform development and the strengthening of internal development capabilities. So essentially what this means is we're going to be getting games across all four platforms. We're not going to be getting any more foam star style games where they are just, designed to essentially fail on impact. Um, but yeah, like
Essentially, what
this
this
is
means is Final
what it should have been
Fantasy
all along.
hasn't been selling very well, and now we realize we actually could have sold millions more copies if we had put it on other platforms as well. uh,
Pretty much. Um, yeah, I mean, like I don't know exactly when the contracts, wear out for what Sony has kind of done
yeah.
for Final Fantasy VII remake.
So I know that.
Um,
So I don't know when the contracts were up, but I do know that it was reported a couple of months ago that Square was specifically considering bringing Final Fantasy 16 to Xbox, and I think that if they were having
yeah,
that conversation a few months ago, I'd imagine that contract was probably a year long, because that's what these. It tends to be that you start at a year and then they continue to pay and continue to pay. Um,
yeah,
Obviously, the Final Fantasy VII remake stuff is more interesting just because that originally was only meant to be a timed exclusive, and that was confirmed by Square themselves. And then Sony just kept re upping the
re-upping.
exclusives. So it'd be interesting to see if and when that contract's over. Um, because, yeah, but I think this is a good thing. At the end of the day, I'm never going to be against more games in more places. It's the exact reason that I'm not against Xbox games coming to PlayStation, and I wouldn't be against
Yeah,
PlayStation games coming to Xbox.
and I think Square Enix is kind of looking at this as like, Capcom's making a shit ton of money. How are
Yeah.
they doing this? Like that's exactly what's going on. Is like it's the Capcom effect that like Capcom had the same
Mhm.
thing where they're like, hey, we're going to stop making shit games.
Yeah.
We're going to release them in more places, and which is why Monster Hunter Rise has kind of went everywhere as well too.
Yeah.
Like it didn't just stay on Switch.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah,
I
like
think
honestly, I hope that
I think that's the thing they have to learn is like you can still do stuff that has an exclusivity window. That's fine. Nobody's against an
yeah,
exclusivity window, but you shouldn't be tying down full exclusives forever. Like you just should as a company like that, that isn't what you should be doing for the best interest of your company.
yeah. No, I think honestly we're going to see. I think the Final Fantasy remake I think will hit um, Xbox at some point. Like I would be a bit surprised if we get like a 3-pack when the next Xbox ships.
That's what I thought would happen. Yeah, that was always my thought.
Um, like because I mean I assume that that Xbox won't get it till a year after the third one.
Yeah, I would have thought so. I would have thought so because I would
But
imagine.
Final Fantasy 16, I could see them releasing it next year.
Yeah, I would imagine that the contracts are already in place for the third part of the remake there. Um, so that one probably will come later. But yeah, Final Fantasy 16, I can imagine that coming next year to Xbox, as you said. I think that would be a good one because that game is good as much as there are significant things that we've spoken about with it, which is
Yeah, I still haven't beat it. I don't even know where I'm at in that game right now. But
fair. It is a good game. I did enjoy it. It's one of my one of my more enjoyable games from last year. Um, but yeah, I'm pleased to see this. I think that Square being more focused also isn't necessarily a bad thing because, like you were saying, look at Capcom. Capcom became more focused. They
Oh
essentially.
yeah, they're making more money. They increased the raise the salary of their teams.
Mhm.
Um, I'm just fucking on fire. And I
Yeah.
mean, they just announced, or they haven't announced. There's a rumor that they're remaking the first Resident Evil, and I think that that's a smart play because I think you do the first Resident Evil, then I think you do Code Veronica, and then I think you do five, and then you suddenly have the Wesker trilogy in the right order. I think that's honestly, kind of what's going on. And that Resident Evil 9 as well too. Lots of stuff. Like Capcom's just absolutely just killing it. Dragon's Dogma was fantastic. The Resident Evil stuff that they've been doing is great. So yeah, I see Square Enix. I can see why Square Enix is like, we need to stop making bad games. You
Yeah,
know.
for sure.
Uh,
For sure. It's going to be
so yeah.
interesting to see what they
Uh,
do though, because they let go of a lot of their IPs as well. So are they just going to be a one IP business at this point? I don't know.
no, I mean, like, there was rumors that they're apparently they might be tapping back into Parasite Eve. I don't know where that kind of
Interesting.
came from, but
Interesting.
they've still got a lot that is uniquely theirs. Whereas things like Tomb Raider and like even like Guardians of the Galaxy and all that kind of stuff, those are don't feel like Square Enix games.
That's true. That's true.
And then yeah, Yakutaro, like apparently there's possibly a new Nier, who knows?
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So hard to say. The last story that we're going to be covering here is one that I'm really looking forward to, and that is developer Airship Syndicate has temporarily suspended Wayfinder's new sales while the game transitions into a single-player adventure and removes all microtransactions in the upcoming Echoes update. The MMO initially faced a rocky launch, but is now on a transformative journey as developers announce major changes aimed at enhancing the player experiences and addressing past shortcomings. Wayfinder is an MMO released in early access in August 2023, originally published by Digital Extremes, but now Airship Syndicate has just taken the title for themselves. It's set in the fantastical world of Avenor, where players take on the roles of characters with unique abilities and playstyles. The game focuses on defending the world against a malevolent force known as the Gloom, which threatens to destroy everything. Wayfinder's players can pick different character classes, customize their adventures, explore dungeons, hunt beasts, battle enemies with friends, and gather materials for crafting weapons and housing. Although the game's initial promise was exciting, players have encountered significant issues and shortcomings, leading to a negative reception, with the game currently holding a mostly negative rating on Steam. As reported by Airship Syndicate on the Wayfinder Steam page, new sales of the game have been temporarily halted. However, existing players will continue to enjoy the uninterrupted gameplay. Despite Wayfinder's rocky start, the developer expressed a deep belief in the game's potential and the world its team has crafted. Airship has assured that it has invested considerable time refining core aspects of Wayfinder behind the scenes, aligning them with the developer's vision for great games while also ensuring a sustainable business model. While Airship hasn't revealed all of the changes yet, they assure players that the game's essence will remain intact while introducing major improvements. Airship mentioned its commitment to enhancing Wayfinder along with its characters and features. One thing that's also been mentioned is you'll be able to, so additionally, the game is moving away from microtransactions with a one-time purchase price of 24.99 USD during early access. Now, once that early access period is done, which is set for June 11th to an unprecedented date, when the early access title is done, it will then arrive for a PlayStation 5 release, as well as an Xbox Series X and S release, but that will also increase the price at that point. So, yeah, I'm super excited for this because I've loved what Airship Syndicate has done. It's run by literally one of my heroes, Joe Madureira.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I'm super pumped for this to come to Xbox. Just because like I would get it for PlayStation, but I don't want to shell out PlayStation Plus
Yeah.
as an
Yeah.
extra cost just for one game. Um, so yeah, I'll be getting it when it hit Xbox, and it's nice. It's that like one purchase gets you everything.
Yeah.
That's
That's really
cool.
good.
I like that.
That's really
So
good. Um, Before we move on to what we've been playing, I've just seen a rumor from some reputable sources that I think is worth mentioning, and that
Sure.
is Charlie Intel has shared. And for those who don't know Charlie Intel, he's a well-known kind of leaker guy for Call of Duty. He does get lots of things right, and he shares something from the Ghost of Hope on Twitter, who is a Call of Duty player and also quite a well-known leaker. And the Ghost of Hope has basically reported that sources are telling him that currently Xbox are planning for the 2026 Call of Duty from Infinity Ward to be a launch title for their next console. So we'll see what happens with that, but I thought that was an interesting one considering what we were talking about with Call of Duty today, and the fact that we talked about the fact, that potentially Microsoft's next console is coming in, 2 years and a bit. So we'll see. But yeah, I think, the fact that we have two well known leakers kind of sharing and talking about that information, that's probably one that's worth keeping an eye on. But with all that being said, let's get to what we've been playing. I can't talk about much other than to say to you all that I am playing Hellblade 2. I have received it from Xbox, so thank you very much, Xbox. And I will have a review of the game on the embargo at outerhaven.net. And the embargo is on the day the game releases, which is Tuesday the 21st. So look out for that. I will, depending on when this episode releases, it will either be in the description at release or I'll add it after, but my review will be linked below, so go and check that out. I can't tell you anything else right now. And I haven't been playing anything else other than, actually, there is one thing. Because I got a PC that I'm also reviewing currently, I've been trying out a few things on PC. I played a bit of the new Starfield update. I played it on console and then I wanted to compare it to the PC experience. That's interesting.
Yeah.
And I also picked up, because I got it at a heavy discount, Ghost of Tsushima for PC. And I have to say, credit to Nixus, because this is the one of the most well polished and well optimized PC ports that I've ever seen. It runs so well on PC out the gate, and I just hope that they can start getting those PlayStation games to PC a little bit quicker, because the job they've been doing with those games so far, bringing them to PC, Nixus is on fire. They've done a really good job at that stuff, so credit to them. But Jeff, I know you've been playing a lot, so what have you been playing?
Yeah, I think I've published probably like 5 or 6 reviews since our last episode. I have been playing quite a bit of kind of indie games. Is there one in particular that you want to hear about first?
Let's have a quick look here, and I will tell you. So, the list. Let's hear about. Let's hear about Mullet Mad Jack, shall we?
Yeah. Yeah, Mullet Majak is, I just put the review out this morning. I scored it a 9.5 out of 10. Um, this game is fucking cool. So basically, this is like if you grew up watching anime in like the late 80s and early 90s, you got things like, Ghost in the Shell, Armitage the Third, like even like there's just there's so much of that kind of era where it was like this OVA where it was just like original video stuff, like it wasn't tied to the big licenses or anything like that. It just became this huge thing. And Mullet Magic kind of captures that perfectly. It is like it's cyberpunk, it's bright, neon, colorful, technologies everywhere, like man and machine have merged. And it's created this thing where like they pull these people in to this like streaming broadcast, and they have 10 seconds or 15 seconds if you're playing on easy, to essentially do as much murder as possible to keep those seconds going and keeping you alive. So Magic is this like hyper fast type of shooter, which reminds me of things like Angerfoot or like Ghost Runner. Um, and like even like I never played Hotline Miami, but I know that that has been the comparison there. So you play as Mullet Magic, and you basically are tasked with saving this influencer, who is named the Princess. The story behind why they need her is pretty funny, and the conclusion of like what happens is even funnier. This game is not a terribly long game. Like you have 9 chapters, and most of the chapters are 10 floors, and each floor is about 45 seconds to a minute and a half because you're just screaming. Like it's this is a game that's meant to be speedrun. And you're just flying through these stages. You get upgrades, things like katanas, Uzis, shotguns, all that stuff. You get upgrades that allow you to do more damage with those things, whether it's like kicking people into fans to get more credits. And I mean circulatory fans. I don't mean like people watching or anything like that. Um, it is it is the type of game where like you'll start and then you'll just like fly through the level and you'll like shoot this and then dodge through a vent and then slide through this thing and dodge all the
Nice.
lasers and then jump and then shoot and like wall run and then
I do
dash and
love
shoot and like
I love games
it's
like that
quick.
because when you can pull off when you do it really well and you get in that sort of flow state where you're like, yeah, you know,
Yeah,
it feels so satisfying. Because when you first showed me this game, I was like, what the hell is this? And then
it's
when you
this sensory
described it to me,
overload.
it looks great. Like when you actually described to me what it was, I was like, oh, do you know what? I'd actually really like to play this. um,
Yeah, and like there's a demo that's available on Steam right now. I don't know how much it gives you, but I mean like the whole game is about like 2.5 to 3 hours, depending on how often you're dying.
nice.
I ended up bumping it down to like easy just because like I wanted to have more time with like the mechanics and stuff because it gives you 15 seconds, and I just felt it was far more playable having that extra 5 seconds. Because it gives you time to kind of like explore a lot of options and kind of not just rely on a lot of the same type of things over and over again. It
Yeah,
allowed you
so
to
you
play with
can do
more of the
different
weapons.
things. Yeah, that,
Yeah, and
that sounds good.
it's so fun. Like there's almost nothing wrong with that game. Like it is unbelievably cool. You have this like this handler in your ear all the time going like you gotta go shoot faster. I'm like, oh my God, there's this. Like she's just screaming and at you. And like the final chapter, which I'm not going to reveal anything about, it plays entirely different than what the rest of the game does,
Oh,
and it
nice. Okay.
is it's so neat, and it's one of those things where it's like that final chapter is what I want to see more of in a potential sequel, because like they do such a good job at what that chapter allows. And that whole fight is really, really cool. Like you're essentially killing these robo billionaires because robots have essentially enslaved mankind. And they've put them through all these like these hellscapes of like, your adrenaline needs to be kind of pumped. So it's kind of like that movie with Jason Statham where he has to keep his heart rate going, otherwise he'll die. Um, so it's that kind of thing, and it's all like
Nice.
anime influenced. So you have like the red vehicle spin out like Akira, um, and Mullet Mad Jack himself is just like this anime kind of like stereotype and stuff. He's mostly a silent protagonist. He does have some one-liners and stuff, but he's not chatting a whole bunch or anything like that. He's
Okay.
gritting his teeth. He has his sunglasses. There's a sniper section, which is pretty interesting. Like this game is just awesome. Like it's visually busy, but all in all the right ways. Like
Nice.
it's
Nice.
very very cool.
Cool.
So I strongly suggest getting it.
We've obviously played more. We've got about 10 minutes left here. So why don't you tell me a bit about the little cat game that you played recently?
Yeah, so Little Kitty Big City is essentially the Untitled Goose Game, but with a cat and with stories and characters and stuff. Because like Untitled Goose Game was very singular focused in it just being about the goose. There were little things where the guy would get angry and stuff, but there was no general story. So this kind of starts with you being a cat, you're kind of stretching, and then you fall off your perch. You get spooked by a dog, you fly through the air, you grab onto a crow, and then you basically fall back down to the ground. You meet up with that crow. He's kind of like a capitalistic opportunist where he's like, hey, if you bring me a bunch of shiny things, I'll give you a piece of fish, which will give you the stamina to attempt your climb back up. And then after you give him that, he's like, hey, here's the other fish. And I kind of wish they didn't show you where the fish were because like you can beat this game very quickly because you only need four fish. You could probably even do it in three. I have no idea, but I had four fish, and some of them are easy. Like you'll see a guy like fishing, and then like you'll go up and he'll take the fish on the line, he'll go put it in his bag, and then he'll drop it, and then you grab it, and then you run off, and then you eat it. And there's another one where a lady's like watering her garden, her rooftop garden, and if you turn off the water, then you can sneak in the window and steal another fish. Like there's these, and then I trying to remember how you get the other fish, but yeah, like it is like Untitled Goose Game where you are essentially um, doing random tasks, but you also have the narrative-based tasks. So you'll encounter this beetle who is like who is helping his influencer cat named Taffy, and his phone has been covered in cement. So you have to go and trip one of the people walking around, grab their phone, bring it back to him, and then he's like, "Hey, you can have my cement phone," and that's how you get your screen capture, your the ability to take screenshots. You get little hats as well too. Like the crow will settle on like a little gotcha machine, and then you pay him shinies, and then you get more hats. Um, you meet up with the Shiba Inu again as well too from the dog, and then you have to collect his tennis balls and stuff like that, and then you get a Shiba Inu hat. Um, the jumping is to me like the jumping is a major part of the gameplay in regards to traversing the world as a cat, whether you can hold down the button and then like automatically jump to where the cursor is. Um, the jump feels a little stiff on its own. That's my only big takeaway is like the jump just doesn't feel as natural and as fun as I think it could. Um, but like it's got a lot of charm. It's got a lot of personality. Like the game, I think is like something that kids will definitely enjoy. Anyone will really enjoy. You can easily beat it in a day. It's not a long game at all. Like I think I beat it in about not under 2 hours.
Wow.
There's a mission where you have to collect like these like three ducks or four ducks for like this Papa Duck who's like missing them, and like one in the arcade has like Ryu's headband, or it could be Snake's headband. I don't know. It's a red headband. But no, it is a very very fun game. It's available on Game Pass, so you can definitely try it out there.
Nice.
But it like again, it is a short game if you are not taking in everything. Like I went back and did a bunch of like the missions and cleaned up a bunch of things and stuff. So I think I've got about 4 or 5 hours of gameplay out of it. But
That's not
no,
bad though.
it's a very very cool game.
And you're doing. Have you done your review for that one yet, or?
Yes.
There we
Yeah,
go.
yeah, like the stuff that I've released since we last recorded, I believe. Let's see here. It would have been. Well, I did. Yeah, I put out a review for Another Crab's Treasure. I finally beat Stellar Blade, and my God, what a final little run of game that was. Like that is one of the best songs for a boss fight I think I've ever heard. Like it's my ringtone now, and that game did not disappoint. They even like kind of tease like a evil return type of thing, so I'm hoping for Stellar Blade 2. Reviews for Little Kitty, Big City. So that is out as well too. I also put a review out for Mullet Mad Jack this morning, and then I also put a review out for Terra Memoria, which is kind of like a game that's kind of similar to that IDN Chronicle, that just 100 Heroes that came out, where it
Hmm.
is like it kind of borrows from like Grandia, where like you have a turn order at the bottom, and then your attacks basically dictate whether or not it bounces characters down. I think it's a good game. I think the story is actually pretty interesting. Combat does get a bit repetitive. I think is one of the only takeaways that I can really say on that game. But it's not a bad game. It's pretty decent. But if you are to play that or IDN Chronicle 100 Heroes, I would say IDN Chronicles
Yeah.
is the better game. But it's also got a much bigger studio, I think, making that one. But yeah,
Nice, nice.
and
Well,
then
you've played one more thing, I
yeah.
believe, haven't you?
I don't think I can. I don't think I can say if I'm playing it.
No, not that one. The what have you
Oh,
played?
oh, that one.
Yeah.
Heading out. Yeah. So we'll wrap up. Because I am playing a game under embargo till the end of the month. Heading out is I'm in the last little bit of that game. So this is a roguelike driving game.
Ah,
And
that's this one. Okay.
I've also been playing Hades 2 as well too, but we'll talk about that later when I've had more time because I've been distracted by a lot of shit.
Nice.
Um, but Heading Out is a roguelike driving game that has a black and white aesthetic, but then it uses yellow for certain things. It uses blue for your rival. It uses red for the police. It uses like these colors, and basically you're running from your fear, which basically moves across the map as you make different paths. So you have a map of the United States, and you basically move from one thing, and you can take this path or you can take that path, which it leads down here. And then each act has a different endpoint where you need to get to, and you'll find radio broadcasts to listen to, which then consumes some of the time, and your time is then like if you have 7 hours of fear, it takes 7 hours for that fear to get to you. So if you rest for 5 hours to get back some of your focus, then fear will only be a couple hours behind you. It'll catch up to you. And you get races. You'll get stopped by cops. You can actually press the left trigger to hide from the cops as they find you on the map, and then they'll drive right by. Um, my biggest issue with the game is that its elements to keep the loop going are very repetitive. Like you'll do a race, and then the radio broadcast is like, well, I didn't mean to break his jaw, and like, oh wait, what? Oh, I just got good news. Like the Interstate Jackalope, which is your name, has just won a race. I've heard that news broadcast probably like 14 times. And like you'll race somebody and they're like, yeah, you're not gonna take me, and then you pass me like, what? How did you do that? It's like, you're just a scared little kid, Interlab Jackalope. And like I've heard that probably 20 times. Like, and it's the same stuff. And like you'll be racing against people and they'll have different names, but then they have the exact same voice line and
That's a
quote.
shame.
So if you're racing against Cynthia or Tabitha or whatever, it's the same female voice saying the same thing.
Oh,
And
that's a
it's
shame.
those elements that suck because when you're going through the game, you get these little story bits, whether it's like helping a homeless man or helping a war vet or like burying like a dog you've accidentally hit or something
Hmm.
like that. You'll have these moments and they'll have consequences for certain things. So if you stop to bury the dog, then it takes 2 hours and then fear catches up. If you just leave, then it ruins your reputation. They don't elude if the interstate jackalope is male or female. It leans more into them being female to certain things.
Interesting.
Um,
Okay.
and then there's 4 acts, so there's 4 loops essentially, and each loop ends with you crashing and then restarting the loop. And you do start the loop back off in the same driving spot, which is a little annoying. I kind of wish there was a little bit more variety. I will say the Act 4 loop has a more extended um, start to that loop again.
Okay.
And the song on that loop is fantastic. I wish they did the entire soundtrack because most of the soundtrack is pretty hit and miss. There's a couple good songs that kind of match the tempo and the feel of what you're doing. But then there's a lot of songs that are just not that great. And I think the aesthetic leans a lot into helping this game. I think if this game didn't have that black and white aesthetic, I think it just wouldn't stand out. But because it does, because it stands out, it's a very, very interesting game. I just don't think it capitalizes on making the loop as unique as possible in regards to its gameplay elements. Like they introduce things like like barricades and traffic and all that kind of stuff, but they don't really change anything in regards to the police chases as much or like the races. It's still the same basic stuff. Um, but it's not a bad game. It's very, very interesting for what it does, and I think a driving roguelike has kind of a neat potential. I just don't think that it satisfies on the loop as much as it could to make those experiences feel different. Like you get different cars which control differently. There's items that you can collect if you're a completionist. So like you'll do a certain thing, you'll make a choice, and then you'll get this item. And if you do this choice, you get that item. So it allows for the repeated type of thing. I think the story is kind of interesting because it allows you to make choices at the beginning of each loop, where it's like my biggest fear, my biggest regret, my favorite memory, and then you'll pick those things. And if you're uncomfortable picking those things, you can go select random answers. So like I tried to pick it as close to me in terms of my regrets and my things and stuff. And I don't know if you those choices only act in one moment of a narrative.
Interesting.
So they're like,
Okay.
you sit on the road and you're thinking about your favorite memory and a road trip and blah 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 blah. And then you'll pick like one or two choices, and then you never hear about that choice again.
Oh, that's
Even
weird.
in the next, yeah, it's. I wish that they were a bit more involved because like you play something like I think it was like Silent Hill Shattered Memories on the Wii or whatever, where if you did the ink blot test and the things and stuff, it would affect your gameplay going forward in terms of like the enemies you fought and things like that. So there's precedent for those types of choices having meaningful gameplay things, but
Hmm.
they only affect those like one little moments, which is a little disappointing.
Well, it
Um,
definitely sounds like an interesting game, though. It's it seems
it
like
is
it's got something
very,
to it.
very interesting. Yeah, I just don't think it capitalizes on making the loops unique.
Hmm.
Um, it doesn't feel because like it doesn't feel like you're not creating a build like in Hades 2 where every single time you venture out, it feels like a completely different
Yeah.
experience. This is a game that is the same experience for every single loop, apart from these little narrative moments. And I've had it crash a lot. Like it's not Steam Deck verified. The text is unbelievably tiny. Um, like this is why it's not verified for Steam Deck for sure.
Yeah.
But I've had it
Yeah.
crash a couple times. But even then, on a normal monitor, the text is super tiny because you get these little tiny texts, and then it's like make your choice, and then below it is smaller text with like
Oh
the
no.
consequences,
Oh no.
and like you'll be dealing with like a black area like this,
Oh wow.
and
Okay.
the text is like little tiny like things. It's like blow it up. You've got tons of space.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, but no,
Well, that
very very
sounds
good.
good.
But that
You've played a lot of
yeah.
games. That brings us to the end of this episode. You should, if all goes to plan, be seeing this episode on Tuesday morning for Jeff, which is Tuesday afternoon for me. Um, which will actually be the day that Hellblade 2 comes out. So let me know if you're playing it in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think of it. Obviously, I can't tell you anything right now, but go and check out my
Yeah,
review
and
from
we'll be
on
having
Outer
our own
Haven.
review
Uh,
on Analog Stick Gaming. I'll be playing it at lunch. I didn't get code. I don't know if it's just because I got to it too late or anything like that, or like we're not a big enough outlet. But I was told specifically no from Microsoft.
well, Jeff will be playing it, and hopefully, Jeff, you would have played at least some of it by the next time that we record, and we'll talk about it then when we're actually allowed to. Because
Oh, for
the
sure.
game is out before we record again, so if you do have any questions or anything like that, put them in the comments, and we will see you next time. But stay tuned to the website for any reviews that's probably coming from Jeff in the recent times, because I'm a bit busy over at Outer Haven at the moment, reviewing a
Yeah, the
PC,
next
reviewing Hellblade
review will
2.
next review will be heading out, so I'll have that out either today or tomorrow. Because like I'm about 10 events
Okay.
from beating it, I think. So I'm in Act 4. I'm in the last little bit. I don't know if there's more after that. So that'll be the
Nice.
next review. Then more than likely jumping into reviewing Hellblade 2, which comes out on Tuesday. And then there'll be another review at the end of the month. Again, I don't know if I'm allowed to say what it is,
That can be a
but it is a game
surprise.
that yeah, it is a super super fun game. We'll have to see when servers kind of line up to play some online
Yes.
with you there, Jordan.
Yes, yeah,
Because
that
I've yeah
we I guess we can say that we're both playing the same game and Jeff's going to be reviewing it, but we can't tell you what it is. Um
yeah, but
so
no,
there's that.
it's honestly when you guys get to see what it is a game that I strongly suggest supporting because it looks fucking cool. It is unbelievably fun.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So I
we'll
guess
get to that
stay
when we get to
tuned
it.
to the podcast for to find out what game that is as well. I'm still trying to arrange some guests to come on the podcast over the coming weeks. That's just hard because of the way that our schedules work, and there was meant to be one today, but then because I wasn't sure that I was going to be well enough to record, that kind of all got rearranged. But we will have some guests on over the next few months, hopefully to talk about games and things like that, with lots of these shows coming up. Hopefully we'll have some more positive things to talk about in a few weeks, Jeff. We are going to do our kind of half year review at some point in June. Probably the first week of June is what I'm kind of looking at the moment. So we'll start thinking about that as well. I have a feeling that I know what Jeff's current game of the year is, but
Stellar Blade, baby.
So we will. So we'll have a fun conversation about that. And yeah, please subscribe, like, share with all your friends, all that good stuff. And we will see you next time. But for now, it's a goodbye from me.